Hi everybody and welcome to episode 7 of the Red Sofa Conversations. I created this series because I really think that conversation is the gateway to connection, and I love meeting people and actually figuring out who they are and learning from them along the way. So with me on the sofa today is my friend Matt. Now, Matt and I met 5 years ago when Matt was running a workshop, probably one of the first iterations of the Do Work You Love workshops at Escape the City's Escape School. And when I first met Matt, I had watched his TED Talk, and there were a lot of things in there which really resonated with me. And so we've decided to come together to do this episode on career change and transitions and the hero's journey, answering the call. So just a small topic.
Yeah.
So Matt is, as well as being a facilitator, Matt writes on his blog, Give, Live, Explore. And the one thing that I will say is that I have probably 54,000 unread emails on my Gmail, but when I get Matt's emails, I make a point of reading them because you have this incredible way of speaking to my soul. And I generally actually cry when I read your emails because it's literally like he's got into my head and he's saying things that I have only barely just thought to myself. So
wow. That's the highest honor, actually.
Well,
thank you.
I love language and I love ideas, and you express both beautifully. So I'm so thrilled that you're on the sofa with me today.
Oh, it's great. It's nice to be here. Yeah, it's hard to believe it was 5 years ago or so when we first met. So.
And then we met last year at Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic Workshop.
Yep. Yeah.
So, right. Cool. So, should we kick off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's dig in. I'm happy to talk about anything, everything, and.
Perfect. All right. Well.
I'm pretty honest and try to be authentic in everything I talk about. So.
Yeah.
No holds barred. Brilliant.
Okay. So. So before we came on camera, we were talking about how when you're making any kind of, I suppose, transition, and for us, what we've been in is career transition.
Yep.
It's kind of like the hero's journey. And Liz Gilbert was interviewed by Oprah on Super Soul Sunday. And so for those of you who don't know the hero's journey, it's a concept that Joseph Campbell has written about several times. And so it's basically, this is the hero's journey in like a nutshell. You get the call. You then have to decide, are you going to answer the call? If you decide that, then you go through the trials and tribulations. And then the dark night of the soul, which is like probably the lowest of the low.
Yeah, the all is lost moment.
All is lost moment. And then you find your teachers, and then you come through, you push through fear to get through to the other side. So why don't we kick off by by talking about the call. What is when you get the call? What does that feel like? What does that sound like?
Yeah. Well, I think talking about the hero's journey, so some of the stories and the biggest pop culture narratives were inspired by the hero's journey, either explicitly or kind of indirectly. So Joseph Campbell, Lucas, Star Wars guy.
Okay, Luke Skywalker.
No. Who's the guy?
George Lucas.
George Lucas. So Joseph Campbell worked with George Lucas. And basically the Star Wars story is a classic hero's journey.
Okay.
But you also, you don't have to look far. Lord of the Rings, classic hero's journey. Harry Potter, classic hero's journey. So Lord of the Rings in particular, Frodo living in the old world, the Shire, everything is safe, everything's comfortable.
Okay.
And then he gets the call to go on an adventure.
Okay.
And at first, there's the refusal of the call, so that's another part of the hero's journey, is the call to adventure, which is, in these stories, it's the literal sense of Frodo's, has the opportunity to leave the Shire and go on a great adventure. But, I guess for us, it could feel like that, but it could also just be a call to become something more, it could be to journey, to adventure, but it could be to try something new. It could be to ask big questions. And at least for me, I mean, call to adventure, I feel like, was it was about 7 years ago, and I had a friend who was killed unexpectedly in a car accident. And that was, I remember that very moment, because the 5 years prior to that, I was kind of, so I used to, just backstory, I used to work at IBM for 5 years. I studied engineering at uni, got a job with IBM, great company, great job. But every year in that 5 years, I was like, I think I'm meant for something more. I'm not sure what that is. Yeah. And so anyway, I didn't really know what else I would want to do, but there was a moment where I got a call.
And that's the difficult thing, isn't it? Because if you have the duality of, well, I'm good at this, but I'm also good at this. Yeah. So maybe if this isn't feeling right, I will have a natural thing. But if you don't know exactly what it is, it's hard to leave certainty and security. Yeah.
And so, and that's actually, I think, most, and you were saying, Liz Gilbert says that most quests begin with questions.
Yes.
And that's certainly, it's actually not, okay, I know exactly what I'm going to do and where I'm going to go. That's a lot easier. Instead, it's, okay,
it's the feeling, like what you described is and yes, yours was, is the word catalyzed? Is that the right word?
Catalyst.
It's a catalyst. Losing your friend like that. Yeah. And that's another reason that we connected, because when I watched your TED Talk and I heard that, I had lost my cousin 8.5 years ago, suddenly in a car accident. Yeah. And when something like that happens, for me, I describe it as like a bomb that just detonated in my life. And it caused me to start questioning everything in a more palpable way. And I felt very torn at the time, because, being in active grief as well, like I was trying to get through the day. But I think the seeds were sown then, because I looked at what he was going to be doing, and he was going to be a doctor. He was 3 weeks in medical school when the car accident happened, but he was going to be a doctor and he was going to serve people. And I looked at my own life and I thought, I'm in a career that it's brought me great things like stability and security and independence, but I've just never felt that is the career for me. I've done well at it. I've worked hard at it. I've taken what I can from it in terms of, the wonderful relationships and the experiences. But just deep inside, I didn't feel it was right. And yet I didn't know what else. So I think I refused the call for many, for quite a number of years until last year.
Yeah. And why... This might be partially like me asking you questions, because I facilitate workshops.
This is a conversation.
Yeah. So, like, why did you initially get into law?
Based on TV shows.
Really?
Terrible reason. Yeah. So 2 TV shows in particular. One was Paper Chase, which was set on the East Coast, I think, maybe in Boston or something, and it was a group of students debating things with their professor. And so that TV show drew me to the intellectual curiosity and the being able to analyze and make arguments and, the for and against. And so I liked that intellectual debate. And then LA Law, because I felt that they were helping people. And so the irony, I can see that, there are elements of that fitted into what I ended up doing. But because of LA Law, I thought that I would go into litigation. It's just that when I ended up doing my training contract, I didn't like litigation that much, and I liked corporate. And I'd never done any corporate electives at university or at law school, apart from the core ones. But what I liked about it was people coming together. When you're running corporate deals, you're sort of at the center of the deal, and you're the one that draws together all these different specialties. You liaise with the client, you kind of make sure that everything runs. And I liked that sort of being able to work as part of a team and get to an end goal where you're creating something. So that's why I ended up in corporate. So I can now, when I look back, I can see the reasons. But, I didn't feel, I guess, I'd always been such a creative child, and I'd always written, stories, poetry. I was into music, drama, like all of that. And I kind of lost my way with that. I didn't do virtually anything creative since I left school. And then I was doing this, grown-up, responsible job, and I lost what was a part of myself. And so I suppose after losing my cousin in 2010, little by little, I didn't make the dramatic life change that you made, because I just didn't feel ready and I felt entrenched. And so I sort of, I stumbled onto speaking. So I became a speaker, and I finally felt, I'm able to express myself. I'm able to use my voice to talk about things that matter, that other people are going through. Maybe in speaking about it, if someone hears, they will look at me and they'll see something of me in them, and they will feel like, if she can do that, I can do that. Or if she's going through that and she looks so put together from the outside, maybe, I'm not broken. And so it's been a very meandering journey of sort of synchronicity, which when you like I have comparisonitis. I think we all do a bit, right? I mean, I look at you. In fact, guys, when I asked Matt to do this, one of the things I said to him was, well, Matt, like you're really successful at what you're doing. You've made this transition and you're doing everything that I would want to. A bit of facilitation, a bit of writing, a bit of speaking. And these are all the skills that I've now realized I have. And I'm like, I'm not there yet. I only quit my job last year. I haven't got established. I'm not bringing in income. And Matt was like, yes, but it's taken me 7 years.
Yeah.
And we all compare, and I think we all compare because we want the end result before we start feeling like it was successful or it was worth it.
Yeah. I think as humans we're very bad at like time and distance and with careers and stuff, because I do the same thing. I'm like, why aren't I there yet? Yeah. And I think it's nice to have those, because it's like, okay, this is what I'm aiming for. It's nice to have a direction.
Aspirational. Yeah.
An aspiration. And actually, if we go back to the first question of, well, if I don't know, if not this, then what? Which was my question, which was your question. Yeah. It starts with questions, but there are some clues. And one of those clues are the people that your heroes, the people you admire, or equally the people that you envy. So the people, like, in one breath, I might be like, wow, I love what they're doing. And then in the other breath, I might be like, damn it, like, they have a book, why don't I have a book? And there's a tinge of envy. Yeah. Those are both great signs of something that is within you, a capacity. And because if there's nothing there for you, it doesn't have an effect. So if someone's doing something in law or whatever, like, great, I have great for them. I have no aspiration to be that. But if someone is publishing books and if someone's giving talks, I either feel great admiration or great envy. So that's a clue.
It's a clue, yeah.
Yeah, and Liz Gilbert talks about these breadcrumbs of, and envy and admiration, I think, is one of them. She talks about curiosity as a breadcrumb as well. Yeah. And this is the antithesis to the find my passion myth.
I did a talk about this 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And now I think, and then I saw you did a video about it, and Liz Gilbert talks about it as well. Yeah, but 3 years ago, it's on YouTube. It's called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Following My Passion. So this was something I stumbled upon, and I would hear, she says that we're a culture that fetishizes passion. Yeah. And because that's all you hear. Oh, well, if you're not happy in what you're doing, you should follow your passion, find your passion. And I'm a Scorpio. I'm a really passionate person. I have a lot of interest, and I feel passionately and strongly about a lot of things. And yet, when people would say this to me, I would feel so stuck and like such a failure, because I was like, I'm a passionate person and I don't know what the hell my passion is, and I'm 30-something and I should know this. And if I don't know this, I'm a complete failure. And so then I stumbled upon following my curiosity, because I ended up deciding, okay, if I can't find that, I'm going to just do things that make me happy and do things that I'm interested in. If I see, and what that's done is that's literally opened up my funnel in the most, and my perspective in the most beautiful way.
Yeah.
And I found things that I like to do that I would never have thought I'd like to do before.
That's interesting, and I've thought a lot about this because in the workshops at Escape, we talk about this, and it's one of the very first things we debunk is this myth of I need to find my passion or I need to follow my passion. And you hit on why this is hard. Number one, and actually Stanford did research on this, and only 20% of the population can identify a singular passion. 80% of us mere mortals have many things we're passionate about. So to rest it on this one thing, it's very confusing because it's like, wow, I'm kind of interested in a bunch of things, because you can either be super passionate about a lot of things or you can be not that passionate about things too. Like I'm in the more passionate part of the camp versus I have friends who are kind of like semi-intrigued about certain things.
But not enough to even just explore. Just like, oh, that's okay.
Yeah, and that's where curiosity comes in because it doesn't... Passion is about the destination. Curiosity is about the direction. So passion is like, or at least that's the way I think of it, is that passion is, okay, this is the thing I'm passionate about, so I'm just going to rearrange my life to go,
follow that.
Yeah, pursue that thing. Versus curiosity, it doesn't require that you know where you're going. It just requires that you are following something.
Or you have a little kernel of interest that's going to enable you to take one small step in that direction.
And that's all you really need. And it feels very concerning because you don't know where it's going to end up. I like to think of curiosity. So one of the things I call did I ever talk about the chasing tennis balls? Did I ever share that metaphor with you?
That seems a little familiar.
This is like my classic metaphor that seems to have gotten legs when I do workshops. So I like to think of curiosity as like a dog chases a tennis ball. And if you have a dog and do you have a dog?
No, but I always wanted to have a dog.
So, like most dogs, you have a tennis ball and you throw it or some sort of ball, the dog just goes to chase it.
Okay.
It's like, unless it's kind of a weird dog, like most things, something in its DNA that's like bouncy, shiny thing.
Yeah.
And, for us, I think we have those as well. And I think there's many things. And it's those things that kind of pull you. Like, for instance, for me, I can't walk past a bookshop without walking in.
God, me too.
So now
it's a happy place.
Yeah, so I don't know how to relate that, or at least like 10 years ago, I had no idea how to relate that to a career. But I just knew, okay, I'm obviously curious about books. I'm curious about publishing.
Were you an avid reader when you were young?
No.
Really?
I could not, for school, I would be the kid that would never read the books.
Oh my God.
But I've rediscovered reading because I'm reading about stuff I actually want to read, that I'm interested in, because a core driver for me is learning. So if I'm going to learn something, then that will drive me. Or, now I'm getting a little more into fiction, but less so. But anyway, but meanwhile, now a lot of what I do is writing. Is one of the first things I did after I left IBM was create a book with my friend who he was a great writer, and I saw Amazon changing the publishing industry, and so we decided to put together a book about our trip to Iceland. And so he wrote the book and I figured out how to publish it and sell it, and now it's still on sale at Amazon and in bookstores in Iceland. But this was, it was the curiosity that I had to start with. Okay, what if we were to create a book together? Something I'm curious about. I don't do publishing anymore, but that gave me a skill set that the very first paid work I did with Escape the City was to help them format an ebook, that I had learned the skills to format books. So in addition to writing on their blog for free, but that was like the first kind of paid interaction.
Yeah.
And then years later, they would ask if I would come over to help them launch the school because I was writing about the similar stuff. I was talking about it. I had a skill set, and a story. But it's really funny how if you chase a tennis ball, it might not lead you. I'm not now I'm doing writing groups again, but I'm not working in publishing.
Yeah.
I'm doing facilitation, but I had to start chasing it.
Yeah. I think that's totally right. And these are skills, or these are concepts that I only became familiar with when I actually experienced them myself unknowingly.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's when I started to really believe in synchronicity. I don't even think that I'd ever uttered the word synchronicity before 2013, 2014. And yet I can literally trace my journey from 2012. And it started with getting a laptop at home. I'm a bit late to technology, so I just never needed it because I was always at work. And then when I'd left, I was like, okay, well now I need to get a computer. And doing that then opened my eyes up to, you know, I was saying yes to certain things, and I was discovering, you know, different courses, and just one thing kept leading me to the next. And then through, you know, I discovered Matthew Hussey, and I went on his retreat, and through that I met Jo, who's done episode 3 with me on creativity, and she was a member of what was then Pony Express. And so then that led me from there, that led me to Escape City, to you know, meeting you know, and I can literally just see one thing. Just it's like it's not even like dominoes. It's kind of like Hansel and Gretel, you know, following the sweeties. And now, I think the hardest thing for me now is that I chose to answer the call a year and a half ago, where I was in a job. I was head of legal for an investment management firm. I was, you know, closing deals, and I was you know, succeeding. And the same nagging feeling that I've had all the way through from being, you know, a lawyer was like, is this really for me? And I don't know what it was, what was different about this time, but I literally felt like every day I was doing this was a day that I wasn't doing what I was meant to do. And I guess maybe it's a simple fact of really taking stock of my life and thinking, I have done this for almost 20 years. And I have another 20 years of my life to go. And if I don't make this change, at least, and if I don't make this change now, like Reese Witherspoon posted something on Instagram, which is like, you are not too old and it is never too late. It's like these like collections of words, they just really like strike home, because we so often we can put off doing things because we think, oh, I'm too old for, you know, I'm too old to do this. I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm 50. But actually, if you're still feeling it and you keep choosing to ignore it, then another 10 years will pass, and you'll look back at how young you were 10 years prior, and you'd be like, God, I wish I'd done it then. And so I think that was the reason that I made the decision. And I know with a lot of people, when they're making transitions, you know, the safe, secure way to do it is to keep your established job and then start, what do they call it, a side project, or do something.
Side hustle.
A side hustle, that's right.
Project.
I knew there was a sexy word for it. And to do that, and then you sort of see whether you can start, like, that gets momentum, and then you cut down on days. And I'm not knocking that. I think that if I was able to do that, that would have been perfection. Because then I would have kept my, you know, security and then been able to see something grow. It's just that the job that I was in, it's extremely demanding, and it took a lot out of me, and I didn't have anything left. Internally, I just didn't have any juice, any creative. It stifled my creativity. You know, for a time, I was still speaking and enjoying that, but I wasn't able to have the mental space to be able to figure out. And so I think that, you know, when you finally decide that you're going to answer the call, like you said a few moments ago, it's not a linear path, and it's not, and it's not like, okay, that's it, universe, I'm ready, I've answered the call. Come on, do your best. It actually can sort of, when you answer the call, it can then plummet you into feelings that you've never had before.
It will plummet you.
It will.
It's that you go.
I'm so glad that everything I've experienced is normal, because it's been a real roller coaster emotional year for me, Matt.
Yeah, well, I understand that, and it's funny. It's like we think that life should not be hard. Like, why? Yeah,
we do think.
You know, it's like, and all these great stories. It's funny. We watch a film. We read a story, and if the character goes through nothing difficult, Like, that's the worst story in the world.
It's true.
But when it comes to us, it's like, no, I just take me straight to Mordor with no, like, trials and tribulations. But, you know, then what is life about? You know, so all hero's journey or any sort of meaningful journey, you plummet into hell, into Hades, into, I mean, that's all these myths too. It's like you get pulled down.
I think we like to, I don't think we mind so much the plummeting if we know that we're going to come out. Because then we're like, you know, when you watch a movie, you pretty much know that the ending is going to be happy, and I'm a sucker for happy ending movies. So I wouldn't mind. I can be like, okay, I can be good with the uncertainty for a while, as long as I know that it's going to all turn out good in the end.
Right. So
and that's the hard thing.
And this is when if we're going to use that analogy of movies, we, instead of being the spectator, we have to put ourselves in that hero's shoes and say, does that hero know it's going to work out? And they probably hope it will.
God, I never thought about that.
But actually, if we empathize with what they're going through hell. You know, it's, and that's like why these stories on a subconscious level resonate, is because it is, you know, it's the human story, or the potential to be, and we're really excited about them, and of course it's a lot more difficult to voluntarily, well, you can either voluntarily put yourself there, some people are taken there against their will, right?
Yeah, sometimes life events can happen. Yeah,
you know,
health can do, yeah.
You're fired, something happens. So you have two ways in.
Rocks your world.
And it's either going to happen to you, or you can happen to it, and you can, it's a lot harder to do the latter, is to actually, okay, I'm going to actively step into this thing. Sometimes I always wish, like, I had these secret wishes when I was at IBM that I wish someone would just fire me, because that would make it a lot easier. Then I would get plummeted into it
and then
myself.
You feel like, well, then you have to, what is it, you jump off and knowing, what's that quote? We're talking about butchering quotes.
Yeah.
That you, oh God, this is
build
terrible.
the wings on the way down?
Yes, you get pushed off a cliff and you just have that faith that you'll build the wings on the way down.
I mean, I like secretly would wish that. And some people, they kind of get that where they're let go, you know, or they're made redundant. And then there's this like sadness and like rejection or whatever, that feelings that come with that. But then there's this like kind of excitement of like, okay, now I actually
can
great.
do,
I've
it's
been
like
given a
permission.
way out. But it's a lot harder to put yourself into that. But it's certainly, I describe my life before and now is kind of like, before is kind of like, yeah, things are not that like exciting, not that depressing, but you know,
even keeled, fine.
But
yeah.
And since then, it's been like, whoa. And what I can say, and actually Joseph Campbell says this, is that he says, I don't think what people are seeking is the meaning of life. What people are seeking is the feeling of being alive. And that's what I felt.
That's beautiful.
Is this feeling of being alive with all the highs and all the lows. And if you can say, and I've started to look at negative emotions,
like what?
Loneliness, like sadness, like heartbreak, like, believe me, when you're in it, you're like,
it feels,
this is
the hardest worst. Thing with negative emotions is that you feel that you're not going to come out of it. You feel that they're permanent.
Yeah, and that's where we get like into psychology and stuff. But I mean, for me, when I started, it was just very weird, right? Like some of the darkest emotions, I would then, if I had the wherewithal to do it, and if I was just able to zoom out a little bit on my life, and kind of like, almost like I was watching my life like a movie, I started to, number one, see, okay, this is the person's going on the journey, and this is a darkest, you know, all is lost moment, or a lost night of the soul, dark night of the soul moment.
Yeah.
But then I started to look at some of these negative emotions as like equally as beautiful as some of the highs. And it's hard to do, but
how did you do that?
It's like this like detachment from, because when you're in it, it's about you. It's your ego that's being twisted.
Because you're feeling the pain as well.
You're feeling the pain. And
physical, emotional pain.
Yeah, and especially like something like heartbreak or, you know, whatever. It's like I would look at my body
Okay.
and myself, and I'm like, I'm not actually physically going through anything, right? There's no, my arm's not being broken, I'm not, but like, wow, I feel so much tremendous pain. And when I just...
Because emotional pain can be more than physical pain as well, right?
Totally. And I just started to like examine it a little bit and be like, wow, it's so fascinating how my body is completely fine, but like my heart and my mind and my body is like internally is going through something. And I don't know, it was kind of, I don't know if it was an out of body experience. I wouldn't describe it that drastically, but I then began to like see this like with a little detachment and maybe with a little wisdom on, wow, what a unique emotion this is. Like, wow, this pain, that's really fascinating. Like, it's very,
so you're looking at your emotion with curiosity.
Yeah, and just like almost with like a love, because it's, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to describe it and harder to do it, but to actually look at that as just as beautiful. Like, because what's happening is you feel alive, and I would be like, oh my God, I am so goddamn alive.
Yeah.
It's like.
Or maybe it's not even just feeling alive, but feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us are going through life, and like you said, everything, it's fine.
Yeah.
And for some people, like, that's fine because they haven't got that stirring inside them yet. I mean, I think that we all have the capability, and whether we acknowledge it or whether we start to become aware of it depends on how much we're trying to numb ourselves through all the incredible ways there are to numb ourselves in life,
Right.
all the different addictions. But
And that's what we do. We live
try
for
to numb.
the weekend. We
Drink too much, or shop too much, or gamble too much, or whatever.
We don't want to feel.
We don't want to feel.
Especially the sadness.
But actually to feel, is such a gift. And it is so beautiful because you're right, it does teach you. It teaches you that you are alive by nature of feeling, and that nothing that is worth doing, nothing that is uncertain, nothing that where you can't see the end, is going to come easily. It's always going to come with accompanying feelings that you have to push through, because if you didn't have to push through it, then everybody would be just doing it.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's as easy as all of that.
And you wouldn't find much meaning in that, because there was no work, there was no struggle, there was no pursuit. That's that kind of, there's cliches around, it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Right, I mean, that's
I mean, things are cliches because they're true, like, but because it's true, right?
Yeah, and I think if you can, like, have the wherewithal to be like, oh, I'm in it, like, I'm in the shit, this is me, like, on the journey. Because, it's like, I like the movie metaphor again, because this would be a really shit journey. And if you were watching it, if the person didn't go through those things. So I think if we start to look our lives like a story, like an interesting story, it includes those things. And there's this practice I've tried to do, at least when I was initially when I was traveling and going through like some of the dark emotions, was zooming out and viewing myself like a movie, viewing my story. So if I was faced with decisions, I would zoom out and say, what would I want Matt, the protagonist, to do in this film? Would I want him to just, do the boring thing, the safe thing? Or actually, do I want him to go on that adventure? And there was one moment in particular. I was in Lithuania, and I was invited to go on this. I was traveling by myself, didn't know anyone. I was invited to go on a hitchhikers meeting in the countryside in Lithuania. Not like what felt like an adventure to me. I was still like, everything was adventurous, and which basically meant meeting a strange Lithuanian person. Not that they were strange, but I did not know them. In a random place on the outskirts of the city, and getting in her car and having her take me to the countryside with 100 strange hitchhikers. And so I was in the coffee shop doing some reading, doing some writing, and I was like, actually, I can't really be bothered. I kind of just I'm kind of cozy here. And then I did this practice of like zooming out and be like, what do I want Matt, the protagonist, to do? I'm like, well, obviously I want him to go on that thing.
Have an adventure.
So I was like, great. So if you're able to have that third party perspective that like you're viewing it, and then I was able to detach myself a little bit, the hero from the spectator, and be like, okay, great. I packed up my thing and I was like, I ran to the station and I got a bus and then I met this person and had a super interesting 3 days in the Lithuanian countryside, something that I wrote about later. But yeah, so I think that's kind of a practice that I've tried to do, is zoom out and what would I want this protagonist to do, not what feels very safe and easy to me right now.
And I mean, like with anything, the more we start flexing that muscle, the muscle of curiosity and the muscle of, you know, trying and just pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone. Like if you think about it like an elastic band, the more you stretch it, it's never going to go back to where it was before. It's always going to be a little bit looser. So what you're doing is that you're just expanding your spheres of, you know, what you can be curious about.
And if life is nothing like but that, like what's you know, it's
so
like
that's kind of the purpose. Why
else are we here then? To grow and to connect and to challenge ourselves and you know.
I totally agree. It's keeping that in your heart when you are in that discomfort, because I think there's a difference between knowing and doing. I know a lot of stuff, and yet sometimes the doing part of it, it's not that I forget it, but I kind of feel like, oh my God, you know, it's what Jay Shetty said in his video yesterday, you know, don't make permanent assumptions based on a temporary emotion. And I think that we're all guilty of doing that sometimes. I think that we're all guilty of sort of thinking it's never going to work. You know, and so this is what because it's, as I said, it's been a really challenging year for me. And what I've decided to try and do, and what I'm sort of doing, is two things. Looking at actions that I take. So for example, I recorded a voiceover reel because in the last few years a lot of people have been commenting on my voice, and it's become this whisper that's got louder. It's a clue, right? Like lots of people, even in a non-speaking context, you know, if I'm going on a date or if I've left somebody a voice note, like my voice is one of the first things they comment on. And so the thing about voiceover work is that, you know, first you have to get an agent, then you have to get work, and, you know, like with everything, it's competitive, etc., right? So that's what everyone tells you. But then, so I could either look at that and go, oh, what's the point? You know, what's the point of doing it? It's going to be really competitive. But there are lots of lawyers, writers, actors, model, you know, there's lots of everybody in the world. So if you look at that, you can't make decisions based on, oh, well, you know, there's just too many, because you are you. And the other thing that I decided to do with that in particular is look at it for what it is and think, I'm going to enjoy the experience of doing it, because that experience is going to teach me things that I can apply in other situations. But also, if I don't do it, will I look back? Or sorry, if I do it, am I ever going to look at it and regret doing it? And the answer is no. So I kind of try and make decisions and say yes to things that I know that I'm not going to regret doing. And that way it helps me focus more on the thing in itself in front, rather than what am I going to get out of it.
I think you hit the nail on the head. That's like, because
it's taken me 5 years, Matt, to like get to this point of being able to, you know, really believe it.
I think that's the thing, and that's like in the workshops at Escape. It's always when we say, okay, who do you admire? Who are your heroes? What are your curiosities? What are your frustrations? You know, those are all clues. Or what are you hearing back from the world, which is also like using what you already have, right? So
using
skills,
your natural
strengths.
Yes.
So these are all clues. And everyone always wants to know, okay, great, how can I make a living out of that? And this is where the money comes in, this is where the suspending your instant gratification of like needing it to be transactional, of like, okay, this plus this plus this equals great, people are going to pay me tomorrow. Maybe, but you know, chances are it's a longer journey if you're trying to do something that is rooted in what actually is meaningful and interesting to you.
Yeah.
And I think that's spot on. You want to know how it's going to pay you, but if I look at my work at Escape, believe me, I had no idea that the last 3-4 years that a majority of my income would be by running workshops to help people change their career or quit their jobs they didn't like. Like, that wasn't even there's no job description. Like, when I was going through school, there was no such thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind
Which
of...
shows how the world of work has expanded massively.
Totally. And just also how you have to suspend, if you can, suspend that, whatever you need to do to follow these things that might not immediately pay off. Whatever you need to do to give yourself that time and space and mental, psychological space to do it, I think the better. And there's quotes. We talked about quotes. Again, this is someone else's that I'm going to butcher, but it's like driving through the fog with your headlights on. You can't see the whole way, but
you can just see the bit just in front of you.
You can get there. You can get there because you see this far of the way, and then you drive that bit, and then you see, oh wow, I didn't even know the road curved over there. Mm-hmm. I could have never known by staying here, which is why we just have to just start driving, and then crap.
The one foot in front of the other.
There's a big lake there, or there's a mountain there that I could not even see, or there's a group of people there who are there to help me. So it's like, that's why action is always important. So what you're doing, I think, is super great. Getting the voiceover work and following those clues if people are saying this. So you invested the time and money to do a reel, and now putting yourself out there is the next step, right? Mm-hmm. And these are all great actions, and you're driving through the fog. You're like, all I see is this, and then you drove a little further. And I would guess what happened. I don't know if have you met anyone interesting since you started pursuing this thing, or have you learned anything new?
So this is the really interesting thing. The idea, I had the idea for doing this series a year and a bit ago, and it came out of, I did a media session at Speaker Express, and I was interviewed. And the person that had interviewed me was like, oh, you'd be super interesting to get on and whatever. And then I practiced interviewing somebody else. Just we were split up into groups, and the act of sort of doing that, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed having a conversation with somebody, learning from them, exchanging ideas, and that's why I wanted this series to be not a series of sort of straight interview questions. I wanted it to be a conversation because I love the meandering. I feel conversation is like a dance, and you never know where it's going to go, and it can take you off into different directions, and that's what makes life interesting, following the movie metaphor. But yes, so far, I've done I've recorded 7 episodes. 2 are out. The 3rd one will come out on Sunday, and 4 out of the 7 people are people, including you, that I have met as I have explored. Yeah. And I had no idea that when I met you 5 years ago, I'd think of this interview series, you'd be doing this, project with me, and same with, with the other people that I asked. I didn't even know. Yeah. So, it's the breadcrumbs. Yeah. We come back to breadcrumbs.
And also where this will lead you, because you have a path right now. Yeah. You're driving. You're hoping it's a straight line to,
Well, that would be the easy, perfect way.
Right. But what's going to happen likely is that there's going to be, and it's not like it could be a little bit of this, but more so it's going to be like this, that doing this might put you in touch with this person, or this person might see your video and then ask you to be a part of this thing, which then takes you there, and then so actually you're like, well, this is where I was going, and maybe that's where you'll end up, but actually you could end up over here, which just maybe great.
And which you never even because with all of these things you can't think yourself. It's like you can't think yourself confident. Yeah. You can't think yourself out of fear. The only way you get to any place is by doing. Yeah. Do you remember last year at the Big Magic Workshop in the Q&A, or maybe it wasn't in the Q&A, but it was towards the end. So Liz Gilbert talked about something that her friend Rob Bell had said, which is when we look at our life and we look at all the positive things that have happened to us, so you put that in the left-hand column, and then you look at the negative things, and you put the negative things in the right hand column, or the negative emotions rather.
Yeah.
I think that's what she said. And what if we had to pick? If we had to curate our life, what would we want more of? And everyone's like, left-hand column, I want, all these feelings.
Right.
The easy feelings, the great feelings, the ones that make me feel on top of the world. And then she says, when you look at the other emotions and what you've experienced, she said, those come out of the really hard things in your life. And that means that the really it's when you experience the really hard things, which really suck when you're going through them, and they can last for a while, but out of that you're going to have beauty, and you're gonna be able to use, and I think it's called post-traumatic growth, isn't it? Where that's a term. So when we suffer from trauma, we eventually, when we're coming out of it, we grow in a way that we wouldn't. So sometimes the most amazing emotions that we can end up experiencing come out of the hardest times.
Totally. I mean, that's Meg Jay is an author. She's done work on this, resilience.
Okay. And
basically kids who had a hard upbringing, if it didn't kill them or it made them super successful. So, and it's the same thing with muscles, working out. Pain in the present.
Oh, you have to tear the muscles to
strengthen the future. So it's like, it's all around us. It's like, minor suffering or big suffering is actually, that's how we grow, right? And that could even be psychological suffering of, what if this fails, or I'm not that good at this, or crap, that went really bad, or, I'm not selling enough tickets to this thing, which is the rejection, whatever it is. Like, this is us working out ourselves, our future, our future self.
I mean, before, I used to think, I don't know whether you thought this, but I used to think, well, if I'm going to talk about something, or if I'm going to, put myself out there, like, I need to have it all figured out. I certainly am guilty of that, right? Yeah. And I sort of had this feeling that I need to, I don't call it be perfect, but I just needed to have everything figured out, nailed, the answer to every question. And actually what I've come to sort of appreciate organically over the last few years by the people that I look up to is that I find the people who've been through challenge and come through to the other side, or can talk about that and have gained wisdom from that, I find them more interesting than the people that are just portraying the picture perfect version. Yeah. And I'm drawn to more to people that have, that are sharing what their struggles are.
Yeah, totally. And just, I mean, the other fear that people often have when they want to make a change is, what is this going to look like on my CV, or, and my argument to that is like, actually, if anything, the things I've done have helped me in the areas that are important to me. Like
what? Can you give me an example?
Like the work I'm doing now, like the work I did at Escape. It was everything I had done that is like not unemployable in certain people that I don't care about, but it's super employable in the areas I actually want to work, right? Yeah. And so it's like, it's that fear. And I remember hearing the story of Dom, who started Escape the City, one of the co-founders, and the story, he was working at Ernst & Young, and he was thinking about quitting his job to start this website called Escape the City, and he was talking to a recruiter, and and he's like, is this a career suicide move if I do this? And she's like, you know what? Right now, you look like every other person. You went to this uni, you did the stint at EY, you did a stint at Accenture, whatever, and basically you're cookie cutter. If you go and do this thing, you actually set yourself apart. You have an interesting story to share. And I mean, certainly the opportunities that I've had, so I work with a company now called Interactive Workshops, and the fact that I write on a blog, the fact that I've given talks and done workshops, that was what made them want to work with me. So, IBM probably won't rehire me, but great, because IBM, if you want to hire me, it'd be great. Again, but actually, it's like, I want to, I'm authentically aligning myself with the work and the people I want to work with. and it's great because you get to find your people by doing your thing.
That's exactly right. You know, Matt, I totally agree with it, and I think that there's a lot of I don't know how to there's a lot of misconceptions, you know, that people will talk about, you know, like for example, if you need to be to get another job, you need to be in a job. And that literally, I've heard that so much, but that's not been my experience. You know, I have taken time off. This is the third time I've taken off before, you know, going back into the world of work, which I hope to do shortly. But whenever I have interviewed, not one single person has ever said to me, you know, I'm not really sure about you because, you know, you've had X time off. Yeah. In fact, people are really jealous. And people want to know what you did, and when I start telling them, and I did this, and it's none of that's been pre-planned. You know, every time I've taken time off, I've not had a clear path. I've literally taken time off because I needed to, or I wanted to, or chose to, and then I thought, okay, let's see. And it's the let's see, and it's the getting comfortable with uncertainty. And I think the only way you can do that is by remaining open. I mean, it's how I even find jobs, you know, like, because recruiters want to pigeonhole you into, you've done this before, and therefore these are the jobs I'm going to send you about this. And I've always, as a corporate lawyer, I've now described myself, or I used to describe myself as a generalist, which is that because I had worked in a law firm, and then I'd worked in 5 different in-house roles, all in different sectors. And if I had chosen my first job based on what I had been doing previously, I would have become extremely niche. But what I ended up doing was taking the skills that I learned and extrapolating them and using them in a different area. And then with the next job, taking those skills with the previous ones, applying them in a different area. And when you have that, that's why I feel that any transition, if you build on the skills that you've got from the previous thing and from your life, essentially, you know, it's building blocks in our lives, you can always apply them in different areas. Yeah, totally. It's just nothing that you do is ever going to be wasted.
That is something that people, especially lawyers, actually, is
because we're very hard on ourselves and we anticipate risk.
So. I've spent so much time studying and working. Is this all sunk cost, basically? Yes. If I go and pursue something else. For one, that's a really tricky way to look at it, because then it's like, well, why do anything new? But yeah, I think and what we try to do is try to help people explore those shades of gray in between the black and white. You know, where it's often we gravitate to black and white thinking.
We don't even realize that we do that, right? Yeah.
But I've seen plenty of people, either when they're trying to transition, so we started to talk about this, of I think people like you and me, we need like space. Or at least, like, that's what I needed. I needed to step away. 7 months sabbatical was what I did at IBM first. Yeah. And that was space. And then I eventually quit 2 weeks after I came back. But I had newfound confidence, some new skills, some new interests. So, but I've also seen people do it differently, where they actually go down to 4 days a week, to 3 days a week, or they start to, actually, when I moved into freelance, my first client was the employer I was working with, Escape the City. So I was full-time at Escape and then went freelance. So in these transitions, we can use stuff in our old world into the new world, while giving ourselves some space to explore. So I think it's, I think it's super smart.
Have you ever heard of the Friends exercise that Simon Sinek talks about?
Not by name, but maybe by...
Okay, so it's on his website, but I think it's actually, if you're curious about it, it's really good to watch the interview. Arthur Brooks interviewed him January last year at the 92nd Street Y. So it'll be on Facebook or YouTube or something. Cool. Anyway, so Simon Sinek wrote Find Your Why. I've watched a lot of his talks. I really love him. Yeah, that's great. And I love the way that he talks about things that literally, again, it feels like I always had these feelings, but he's giving voice to something that I always felt when he starts talking about leadership and everything. Anyway, so Arthur Brooks says to him, well, you wrote this book, you know, start with why, and then what's the hack in how to do it? So this is what Simon Sinek says is the hack. You get a few of your friends. Now these are the kind of friends that you'd phone up at 3 a.m. and they'd take your call, and vice versa. The kind of like Liz Gilbert talks about the bury the body kind of friends, right? So these friends, it can't be siblings, it can't be parents, it can't be romantic partners, because that's too close a relationship. So you do it with these friends, and you ask your friends, why are you my friend? And they're going to look at you like you're a bit crazy. Because you're asking them to articulate something that it's quite hard to put into words. So what they'll start doing initially is they'll start sort of listing your qualities. And your role is to literally be devil's advocate. You know, you are not going to help them. You're not going to react to anything. So they'll start describing things. You say to them, well, yeah, that's what a friend does. But, you know, why are you my friend? Like, and then they'll kind of go a bit further, and then you go, yeah, but that's what a best friend does. At this point, they're going to probably start to get a little ticked off because it's feeling uncomfortable, right? Like they feel like they've given you everything, and they just don't know what to do. And then it's at that point that the magic happens, because then they give up, and they kind of start saying things. They, instead of describing you, they start describing themselves. And so when Simon Sinek did it with his friends, the answer that he sort of got, because you'll see parallels, is you just have to be in the room and you inspire me. And so they start describing your impact on them. And if you have an emotional reaction to something that they say, that is your why. So I did this exercise with about 5 or 6 of my friends, and it was super interesting, because I'd watched the Simon Sinek thing once through, and I hadn't absorbed the emotional reaction bit and the fact that it would flip. And so I did it with my best friend, who did episode 1 with me. And she was textbook. She literally went through the stages completely textbook. And she said that I gave her hope. And the thing about hope is that when I have been, you know, in the depths of, you know, misery and struggle, hope is the most beautiful thing, because that's the thing that you don't have, and you can't generate that for yourself. So when I felt awful, it's like I felt devoid of hope. So her telling me I give her hope struck this incredibly emotional chord in me. And the other thing, one of the other things that she said, lots of different things, but like one of the other things she said was that, you know, you have this ability to connect with people of all levels, of all ages, you know, and I was like, well, how am I going to make money out of that? And she was like, I said, what job could possibly do that? And she was like, Oprah. And we laughed about it, and I kind of, there must have been a little bit of an idea there, because I've admired Oprah for as long as I can remember from being a teenager. And then when I did the exercise with other people, it was so uncanny, because my trainee, like within 2 seconds of starting it, so hers wasn't a linear thing. Hers, she started saying things like right away, so it was super weird. And she was sort of like, well, have you ever noticed why I come and sit by your desk? Because even though I managed her, we sat in different places. And I was like, well, because you need to ask me questions, or we're going to have a meeting, or you're going to discuss. She was like, no, you know, have you noticed like why I just, sometimes even when you're busy, I'll come sit next to you? And I was like, no. Clearly oblivious. And she said, well, you know, she goes, you just make me feel better by being around you. You're like, kind of like a cup of hot chocolate on a warm winter's day. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah. She goes, you help me sort of break things down. You help me figure out my life. And it's funny, because I guess this interview series is born out of some of the things that my friends have seen in me that I didn't see. Like they were so much a part of me, because I was just being me, that I didn't follow that. I couldn't see it.
So close, yeah.
And so I guess, what are we at? We're probably at time now. So in order to wrap this up, Matt, what would we want to leave people with? People that maybe feel like they, now that we've described what it feels like when you have the call, and people that have had the call but have, like we've done in the past, refused the call and are scared, and they want something to sort of believe in. Like, what could we... Sorry, putting you in
No,
the
it's
spot.
fine. Because, like, I mean, what I want to say is, it's all going to be okay, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is what I want to say. But before it's all okay, it's also going to get shit.
Yes.
It's going to get hard. And if you can, if you're up for that, and that's what I always say is, like, my escape workshops is, if you're up for the journey, if you're up for the roller coaster, then come on, because I'm on it, and there's a bunch of other people on it. We're at different stages, and we're different highs, different lows. But, you know, if the feeling of being alive and the feeling of living authentically in the world and trying to uncover what your place is in the world, which is what drove me. I wanted to uncover my own unique place and what that meant for me and how I can give those gifts to the world, then come on board. But
jump on board.
It's not for the faint-hearted, but I do think it's I think it's our destiny if we're willing to say yes to it. Otherwise, I don't know what would happen. You get to 80, 90 and you didn't say yes.
And possibly regret, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think Matt's totally right, because I think that maybe that's the way to think of it, because it can be really scary to think about embarking on anything. So maybe the thing to think is that, okay, if I'm 80, 90, I'm on my deathbed, am I going to look back and be really glad that I didn't take a chance, that I didn't, that I played it safe? Or I'm going to look back and go, God damn, I wish when I was 38 or 42 or 44 as I am, you know, am I going to think, okay, well, at least I tried. You know, we don't know what's going to happen in life, but I think the trying is so important, because otherwise how can you live? Like, this life is meant to be experienced. And so the only thing I'd want to leave you with is just, if you're curious about anything, just do one thing. That's it. Try one thing. Go to a class. Watch a talk on a topic that, you're interested in. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about the internet now, is we have access to so much. But just try something and do one thing. Yeah. So,
action.
Matt, action.
Action over thinking.
Action. Oh, yes.
That's
Action over thinking. Thank you so much, Matt.
Good.
It's been a total
Thank
joy.
You. Yeah. It's nice to meet you.
I hope you guys have enjoyed this, and as with all the other ones, please let us know if you found the discussion helpful, and if you've got questions, comments, and other topics that you would like to hear us talk about in the future. All right, take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.